Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Hello.
I like I have this microphone in front of me, but this actually doesn't do anything. It's not working right now. So this doesn't do anything except make me feel more important. Like I am a reporter in a TV show.
Microphones definitely have that effect.
Alex, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I just had an orange creamsicle, and I'm excited to talk about this movie. It's part of our ongoing thing here at Cinema Bias, which I've decided to call the Shanley Sons. This is our fourth movie about that's either been written or directed by John Patrick Shanley, the writer of the Academy Award winning writer of Moonstruck and Joe versus the Volcano, and tonight's movie, Doubt.
Writer, director, screenwriter,
playwright, and is he the playwright?
Playwright.
Yeah, and playwright. This one's not a rom-com, Alex. Well,
what?
No, it's not. No, it's definitely not a rom-com.
That's bonkers. How did you figure that out?
I know, it's weird. You hear Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman, and you're just like, the sexual chemistry there must just be off the charts. But surprisingly, no. This one's a very serious movie, and we'll get into it right after our credit sequence. And then
something about nuns and priests, man. Hot porn.
Lots of nonsense. Anyway. I don't know why I put on makeup. You guys are not going to be close enough to see me anyway. With a movie like this. How was your 4th, Alex?
I didn't really do anything. But I didn't really do all that much. I just hung out inside and with like those damn kids and their fireworks.
I think
really loud.
You can say what you want about it, and you can feel differently if you live in a different state. I think if you live in California, the state of California, and you put on fireworks, and you decide to do that, you deserve to lose a finger. Maybe not cumulatively. I mean, not like one finger every year, but you deserve to have, over the course of your life, lost a finger, because there's so many wildfires out here right now. And the idea that everyone is like setting off fireworks in their backyard because they just like love their right to like have sparklers or like giant bomb sparklers. It's ridiculous. Like, it's silly. It scares the dogs. It was like Fallujah over here, like for a little while, like on the 4th. Luckily, ours weren't that upset.
I read somewhere that a few states in the U.S. are trying to make fireworks illegal in their own states. Like I don't think it's ever going to happen in Texas, obviously. But in California or Washington, where forest fires are a very big thing, it totally makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I doubt it'll ever happen because something tells me it's like going to become like the new Second Amendment, like our right to own firefighters. No, our right to like own illegal sparklers. These things are already illegal. These illegal fireworks are going to become like a new, like, hill to die on for some people. And I just don't get it, because those things are loud, they're scary, and you deserve to lose like a thumb. Maybe not thumb, like a pinky.
Yeah. Well, I didn't grow when I grew up on military bases. Fireworks all that much weren't a thing.
Really?
Living on military bases, because there's a lot of soldiers returning from
PTSD and stuff.
Yeah, with PTSD and people recovering, and so fireworks on the military bases that I was on was outlawed.
That makes sense.
However, I remember my family driving like 30 minutes to go to like an air show or something, and then they had fireworks, but that was it.
But you know what? Like, if you go to an air show, fine, that's like in a confined space, and the people doing it are like professionals. I'm saying people who like buy illegal fireworks. They confiscated
it's very different.
Like 16,000 illegal fireworks just in this small area in northern California alone, and it's just silly. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Nor is it 1964-5 when this movie takes place, which is when this movie takes place. You know how I figured that out, Alex? Because this movie starts out with a Kennedy was shot last year reference, and I just
I remember mentioning Kennedy, but I don't remember mentioning that he was shot.
Oh, was it Ted Kennedy? I thought it was John F.
I don't know. I really don't know. I couldn't tell if this movie was released. It was released in like what 2008, 2009, around then. But I was like, this movie felt vaguely late 50s, 60s.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be. I think because I looked it up, I was like, let me make sure I know about Kennedy. I think it's supposed to be 64, unless like you're right and it's the other Kennedy, or one of the other Kennedys, in which case like I'm totally off on the year. But it makes sense that this would be around 64. It's like the integration of like
what other Kennedy could it be?
Well, because like I don't think they might not mention that he got shot. They might have just said he died, in which case it could have been like any of the other Kennedys, all of whom have died.
But what other prominent Kennedys were there?
John F. Kennedy, or there's the junior, there's the son, there was the Ted Kennedy. There was the
Ted Kennedy was significantly later though. He wasn't like in the 60s.
There was the dad Kennedy, like the dad.
Ted Kennedy was later on though.
No, the dad Kennedy.
But he wasn't a politician. He tried being a politician, but
wasn't he an actual politician?
No, he was a businessman. He was a very successful businessman that tried getting in politics. He ran for president or mayor like 4 times and he failed.
Well, then you know what? Then I was right the first time, and this is a movie that takes place in 1964 or 5, because the book is called The Book About Kennedy, or about Kennedy's being shot. There was written by 2362.
Yeah, I know his older brother. His older brother was like, apparently he was being groomed to be president from a kid, but he died in the war, in World War II.
Yeah.
And then John F. Kennedy, he was assassinated, obviously, and his brother Bobby ran for presidency, and then he was assassinated while on
Maybe it was that Kennedy. Maybe it was that Kennedy.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
but I don't think it was that big of a deal. Matthew Dawson, well, if you're wondering what this movie is about, Matthew Singh, never seen this movie. Not a lot of it's about Kennedy. It's just this is a reference point.
Well, okay, you know what? The whole Kennedy thing is just a blip of a moment in the movie. What I do kind of, we're going to be covering a movie, very much it's not a 3 or 4 person a play for sure or anything like that. However, it's a very tight movie. It is a very tight drama with very few characters that you really build a very weird relationship with each of them. Drew in particular. Actually, we haven't really gone into this. Why are we here? Who are we?
Yeah. I didn't say Drew in particular delved into a very weird relationship with them, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, my relationship with these people are normal. Don't accuse me of anything. Don't have any doubt. Let's see. We're here because it's Cinema Bias, and Cinema Bias is a show where we dive into and explore our sort of conscious or unconscious bias towards certain types of movies, what we like, what we don't like, why we watch what we watch, and sort of push us outside of our comfort zone and make us watch movies that we normally wouldn't just turn on the TV and go, oh, I really wanted to watch this movie about Catholic molestation, if that's what this movie's about. Not saying it is. I'm just saying. Oops. Let's see. There we go. I'm back. It's just saying, like, that's what happens in this film, ostensibly. So,
thank you so much, Vernon. Vernon tipped $25. Thank you so much.
Vernon. I should have mentioned, guys. Oh my gosh, thank you, Vernon. I should have mentioned, and I should have pulled this up too, that I am still at Eric's house in. Let me pull this up in upstate, or not supposed to call it that, in Northern California, more northern than we usually are. And so, stop streaming. And so I don't have the Streamlabs thing up like we normally would. So I'm pulling it up right now, and it won't be on the screen the way it should. But we will have like the little notification for the next one. So I will read off your comment, Vernon, as soon as I get in, and we'll be able to do it that way. And I appreciate you. You're appreciated. So what about you, Alex? What was your greatest intro ever? Thank you. What was your sort of thing towards this movie or against this movie or about this movie?
I haven't seen this movie in a very long time. I remember watching this movie for the first time when it first came out, and I really have a bias against like really heavy, difficult dramas. If I'm watching it, I love costume dramas, and but I love romances. I love sweeping war epics, things like that. Give me Lawrence of Arabia, give me Pride and Prejudice, all that good stuff. I like or English Patient. That movie is ridiculous and so.
I will never watch the English Patient.
But I dig it. I appreciate it. But those are movies I really gravitate towards. I have a hard time really pushing myself and challenging myself to watch really intense dramas based on very difficult subjects. It took me forever to watch Selma because going into it, I was like, I don't want to cry today.
Like, isn't Selma in the same time period as well, it's a little bit later as this film, because it's right after Kennedy was shot. That's one thing I can clear on. Right after Kennedy was shot was the same time that Selma took place, right?
Oh yeah, that because includes like John F. As Selma includes specifically MLK.
Yeah, so like that's weird because like I would think that this kind of counts as a period piece. It's not a romance.
Oh, it's 100% a period piece. Yeah, of course.
Vernon, thanks for keeping on mentioning the fact that I've gotten a terrible sunburn. So that's very funny. No, I appreciate you. So I would say that my thing against this movie is I don't like movies. Can't tell if this is working. Yeah, I don't like movies in which like there's a lot of religion, and I don't like really serious movies, and I don't like movies that like have to deal with like heavy stuff, like kid molestation. And generally, I do like movies that are based on plays. That is something I do like because I really like theater, and I like it because it usually keeps, like you said, it keeps the action kind of centrally located. We're not going to be going into like we're not going to be jaunting all over the world. It isn't going to be Lawrence of Arabia. We're going to keep the action primarily located in a couple scenes because it's like a play. You can't go that many places. You have to be able to distinguish it on screen.
Well, how do you feel about horror movies and thrillers that have a focus on religion, like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby?
That's a great question. That's actually really funny because I was thinking earlier today that I'm going to probably get a lot of hot water in this episode because I don't know that much about Catholicism except what I learned from movies, and they always fall into one of two kind of movies, right? You have movies like The Conjuring or The Exorcist, and movies in which like Catholicism is kind of the hero of the story. It's sort of like Eric likes something analysis that they're sort of like the Avengers, like if you get into the Conjuring universe, like it's almost like S.H.I.E.L.D. is Catholicism, and then like you got the Avengers who are like the Warrens, and they kind of like work with Catholicism. They're their own agents, and like Catholicism is sort of like the hero of the story. And then you have a lot of other movies in which Catholicism is not the hero of the story, and is portrayed as like outside of many horror movies, and even within a lot of horror movies, like the Catholic Church is not particularly shown as being like the most righteous like crusaders as they religion try to make it seem to be. So I feel like all my knowledge of that has come from like being a Jewish girl who watches a lot of horror movies and a lot of movies in which like the Catholic Church is like responsible for a lot of heinous crimes. So those are my two planes of reference here.
I also will say my dad's Catholic. My dad grew up going to a Catholic school, and he loves it. He's still a Catholic, and I'm not. I didn't grow up in a Catholic school or anything either, but I definitely grew up around quite a few Catholics.
How'd that feel?
Sure. And so I didn't grow up having this idea that Catholicism was bad, or having this idea that or I didn't even know about the allegations regarding molestation or anything like that. When it came to any particular religion, I had no bad references like Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, nothing. Like I had no personal bad.
She has no bias, is what she's saying.
Ideas about any particular religion. But I also contribute that to living on military bases where there's a lot of international people. But yeah, so watching this movie is definitely kind of interesting in particular just because it is pinpointed at a very particular time. in vaguely 50s, 60s. We don't know when specifically, but let's say early
Well,
mid.
just after Kennedy was shot, so it's 60s.
Yeah, mid 60s. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
one context clue, Alex.
Yeah, that's true. One context clue, and it's. But it's a movie that's even though it is a period drama.
A very period drama.
You could easily move this to say 90s, 2000, and you wouldn't really change all that much except from those little historical references.
Yeah, you would not just say Kennedy was shot. You would say Kennedy just died, and it would be another Kennedy. I do want to say that I finally was able to bring up Vernon's donation. It says, "Can't hang out, ladies, but have a good show. As always, love ya." Thank you, Vernon. I love you as much as I love PS15 or PS21 or whatever I'm supposed to use. Why is my camera not working all of a sudden?
SPF,
whatever. Why is my camera not working? Oh no. Oh well, I don't know what's going on there. But maybe my thing came out a little bit. Can't tell. Let's see. Anyway, keep going, and I'll fix that.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's kind of so that's a weird, interesting little conversation. I actually really like movies that really do that very efficiently, because I feel, especially when it comes to period dramas, the whole point of a period drama is that it's not supposed to be modernized. It's supposed to be set at a very particular time where this was acceptable, or this was accepted or believed, or whatever the situation was. And you can modernize it to a certain extent. I'm just hanging out. Oh, cool. And where it was accepted to a certain extent. However, you would have to change quite a bit in order to modernize it. So like if you're watching a remake of Pride and Prejudice or something like that, you would have to change quite a bit, obviously, at least as far as not the overall story, but you would have to change quite a bit of the actual like day-to-day script in order to modernize it. Compared to this movie, Doubt, you wouldn't have to change all that much outside of like one or two historical references, which I think is very unique.
Yeah,
a little more difficult to do.
I was wondering if in the play it's as widely suggested that this kid is not the kid in it that is at the center of the allegations about whether, not even allegations, about the suspicions about whether a priest played by the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman might be doing something untoward towards a child is a Black child, because it definitely adds to the context of this is a time and a place. I mean, but again, it also like could be any time, any place. Like because of that, it is super relevant today. It's super relevant any period of time that they would have allowed these kids to be integrated into Catholic school. You know, so it's just like a little bit past. You know, like we're talking about Selma and all this stuff. We're just a little bit beyond segregation. Like schools being segregated. This is a Catholic school that has let in like one Black student, it looks like. And that Black student also happens to be perhaps the target. And he's like, you know, we see him being bullied and stuff. And he might also be himself. There's there's sort of insinuations that his mother, played by Viola Davis, makes that this kid might already be queer or outside of like the gender, the typical like masculine, you know, his dad wants to kill him basically because he thinks he's gay. It does like kind of bring up this issue of like, you know, if you're queer and you're marginalized and you're a person of color, like you're going to be targeted no matter what the timeline is, no matter what decade you're in, but especially probably in the 1960s. Yes, you could put it on today, but like the topics of like whether or not this kid is queer and Black would be, I think, talked about in a different way, even if it is some places is sort of up, you know, I don't want to say uptight. What's the word I'm looking for? As sort of restrained and reformed as Catholicism and Catholic Church might be, Catholic school.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I was saying nowadays, it's.
You at least have terminology for it. We'd be like, that kid is.
I mean, it's like nowadays Catholicism isn't so cut and dry.
Is that true?
It isn't,
I mean,
and. Based on what I've been told, based on my own personal experiences and conversations I've had with many Catholics and priests and everything like that, a lot of Catholics are very open about and very accepting of people of the LGBT community, people that identify as gender fluid or non-binary, things like that, or queer, or whatever the situation is.
like
No.
thing to like get that gay marriage.
It's just, well, I was saying it's just a different time. It's just like if you can apply that towards any religion, obviously. Now, Catholicism in particular, obviously, is much more prevalent, obviously, especially in term after a lot of the. There's a lot of different groups within Catholicism. Like I remember talking to when I was in Italy, there would be a lot of like it's Roman Catholics versus Irish Catholics versus Greek Catholics, and there's a lot of different separation between, and they all feel very differently, and also different popes feel differently. Like our current pope is like, yeah, dogs can go to heaven, versus the previous pope was like, no, fuck that. They do not go to heaven. They do not have souls.
That definitely seems to be the Pope to be discussing instead of, whether or not people should be allowed to.
Before that, also denied the Holocaust. So it's kind of definitely changed in terms of. I'm
saying specifically about the idea of whether because there's this thing in sort of the unfair or fair idea that we have in sort of in culture that sort of I think started popping up around the 90s that priests were fundamentally, or at least there was a big cover-up. It's what the movie Spotlight's about, that there are a lot of gay priests, and those gay priests are being equated with pedophilia because those priests would be outed as molesting children. And first of all, we know those two things are not correlated. Being gay is not a sign that you're a pedophile at all. But I think because Catholicism specifically has historically been like, our religion is the one where the leaders of the community can never have sex. And we are also the group that's not accepting of gay people. Therefore, the people who kind of rise to those positions of power tend to be closeted people who cannot, within their own religion, safely, get married or express who they love. They become the leaders of the community, and it becomes this weird self-fulfilling cycle of abuse and of, kind of like this weirdly like protective closed community where they just kind of like there's no consequences. It's all very hush hush because it's not supposed to exist. These priests aren't supposed to feel anything.
Sounds a lot like Hollywood. My God.
Yeah, except Hollywood's like very open to it. Like Hollywood's always, even when it was not queer, it was like it never took kind of the vein that this, I think a lot of at least stories about Catholicism. I'm not saying Catholicism in general. I'm not saying that if you are, we have this idea that priests are supposed to be non-sexual or like, almost asexual. They're not supposed to have any sexual. Well, not even beyond.
That's not true though. That's never been the case.
That's never been the case, and really that, but like, or that like, if it is a case, it can be like the show Fleabag, I think in season 2, like really puts it out well. Like, the hot priest in that show, like, had sex before. Just like the character in this movie who is a nun had a husband before. Yeah. Like these characters chose a higher calling that devote themselves to God, but that doesn't mean they never had any sexual urges.
Mm-hmm. It's not just sex though. It also just refers to urges and just their mindset as well. Like there are priests that are married, but there is a mindset that in theory, you're supposed to be married to Mary Magdalene or married to God, married to your priesthood, that kind of thing. But that's to say that they're supposed to they're supposed to be asexual, because it's never mentioned that they are supposed to completely abstain from any thought or anything. It's supposed to be like, this is not, the whole idea is not supposed to be I'm abstaining from sex because of this. It's a distraction. It's not what I'm here to do. My relationship is with the church and everything. And that's not what I'm not here to have relations, and because that's a distraction for my true purpose.
But I think the problem there, and I think this is kind of like the interesting crux of it, is that like, and this has gone into less so in this movie, but it is sort of the central theme. And I think we're all supposed to understand that this is what the culture is like what we know from movies like Spotlight and from other things, which is that it's not just that they're supposed to have chosen this different lifestyle. It's that they are supposed to be so the pillar of the community. They're supposed to be such the ideal of what we want human beings to be, that they are untouchable in a way. The priests are supposed to be untouchable. And so because they're the leaders of the of their community, they get to kind of sort of make the rules, and like they get to make their, and they don't call them parishes, what they call them, the churches. They like, we find out in this movie. Their parishes, right? Yeah, so
that's where like nuns and priests and everything live. Usually separately.
Like, there's a really good scene. I was also thinking of The Young Pope, which is a TV show, but I really love it, and that's really about like the Catholic Church in Rome and the archdiocese and stuff. But like the scene here that really sticks out to me is like the scene in which you're contrasting. We should probably say what this movie's about soon. If you haven't gotten it, it's about the possible molestation of a child. But more importantly, I think there's a scene here where like we're watching Philip Seymour Hoffman have dinner with other priests, or I guess cardinals in the community, and they're having this like rowdy, rambunctious dinner, and like he's telling this.
They're having a good time.
Yeah, and he's telling like a
drinking, they're like having delicious food.
Yeah, but they're like also like the joke thing is like literally mean spirited. He's talking about like how fat this woman was, and like how fat the daughter was, and like he's like making this mean spirited kind of like over the top joke. And then we cut to like the nuns, which is at this case Amy Adams and Meryl Streep. And Meryl Streep is a real sour lemon. Like she's like the nun that's gonna wrap your knuckles with like the ruler. And Amy Adams is a real like naive, kind of stars in her eyes. Like she became a nun because she like really wants to help people. She's like the Maria von Trapp, Maria. Yeah, she's like the Maria von Trapp nun. Where you're like, she could just meet a nice guy and maybe not have to be a nun anymore. But their dinner is like totally silent. It's totally cloistered. It is like you can hear a pin drop. It's like a bunch of like sour-faced people just eating in total silence. And it's this idea of like the real puritanical version of religion, where it's like everything is supposed to be really sparse, and it's supposed to be like, you're not supposed to have any frills, you're not supposed to have any enjoyment. In fact, like enjoying something is like a sin because it takes away from like your study of God.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's that's something I actually really enjoy too. They really highlighted the patriarchal aspect of the church in this movie, in particular, where it would be like where, regardless of if you would agree or disagree with Sister, I don't know how to say her name, Aloysius.
Aloysius? Yeah, that's
Aloysius, Sister Aloysius, played by Meryl Streep. Regardless of how you feel about her in particular, specifically where she, regardless of how you agree with her, when she confronts Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, because she has no thorough evidence, she is going off a gut feeling. No one is standing with her, and she just doesn't like him. She doesn't like that he uses ballpoint pens. She doesn't like that he likes
his real intense of his ballpoint.
She doesn't like how he is so casual with the students, and it seems like everyone genuinely likes him. The students like him outside of one.
He's supposed to be like, he's supposed to be like almost like a version of, and he tries to make this argument at some point, like that he is like a version of the Catholic Church that is about like the embracement of love, and she's about the Catholic Church that's the embracement of like rules and like scripture and like and punishment. Exactly. It's almost like he's the more progressive of the two of them. His ideology, regardless of his sexuality, his ideology is more progressive than hers.
Well, exactly. And so on one hand, you have it in your core where you just don't like her. So as a result, you don't believe her. And because, again, we don't know. I mean, like, we don't have any solid answers whether or not.
Yeah, the movie never shows us anything. We're never given.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of the movie. But when she accuses him and tells it to his face, the way he goes about it is a very specific patriarchal way, where he's kind of gaslighting her a little bit. And on top of that, he's like, well, she's like, I spoke to a nun. And he's like, you don't speak to a nun. Why did you speak to a nun? You have to talk to the pastor. And she's like, why do I have to talk to the pastor? And he's like, because that is the rules.
Yeah, well, it's funny because then he tries to go on the argument.
She is not in charge. He is the one. And you're like, why does it matter?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost an ironic argument because she is so about the rules that for her to like circumvent, like that's when you start to realize she is not the villain of the story, although she's been written in a very unlikable way. That her going outside of the church, it's almost like she conducted her own private investigation based on a hunch. And however you feel about that,
she didn't conduct an investigation though.
And I know, I'm just saying, it's almost like she conducted her own personal investigation based on a hunch. Although she didn't, she more acted like a detective. She's going off her gut instinct, and she's not collecting clues so much as she's playing like a game of gotcha. And she did. We do see her call up the former parish, but we don't see the conversation that happened. She tells him that she talked to a nun. At the end of the movie, we find out that he has left the church, and for Meryl Streep, that's an indictment enough that he was guilty of the accused crime. For Amy Adams, she was like, well, yeah, and the fact that you spoke to a nun, and the nun said that he molested somebody at the other parish, and she goes, oh no, I never spoke to another. So she's like, I never spoke to another nun. And then Amy Adams was like, well, then what the hell? Like, why did he leave? And she goes, she basically like, the fact that scared him enough to like leave the parish forever is like proof to me that he did molest a kid. Because if he didn't, like, why would he be so scared that I went without the fact that he's so upset that she didn't speak to the rector, or she didn't speak to the other priest, and she went behind his back and spoke to a nun, means that like he's very worried that the official story that the Catholic Church told was that he did nothing wrong. But if you go in and ask a nun, or you ask any of the women in the church who are maybe more aligned with the children, or, you know, maybe not as closed ranks, that they'll tell you the true story. Which, because again, her whole thing is rules and structure, and like, you know, the way the Catholic Church, because earlier on she tells Amy Adams, like, they have a conversation about something else, and Amy Adams is like, well, why don't you just do it this way? And she goes, well, that's not the chain of command. Like, she's basically like, my role is not to question the priest. She's like, I'm asking you your opinion. Like, she's like, I'm not allowed to like ask the priest if he molested a kid. Like, I'm just asking you your thoughts on it, basically, because she knows that that's out. Like, even for her to confront Laura Hoffman is like a brave act, whether or not we like her as a character, and we don't. Like, we don't. She's been shown to be very mean. We don't even get a sense that she cares about the children, except we realize near the end that she must. I mean, that's the only reason to put her job in jeopardy, to put her life with God on jeopardy, like in jeopardy, to go against this very, not just the guy himself, but like the whole institution of Catholicism and like the community of it is basically like her putting it all online and being like, I have a feeling that something is really wrong here.
I disagree. I don't think it was not about a true gut feeling. I think it was more about an issue of pride. And it felt to me more like she was refused to back down from him in particular. She does not want to admit if she's wrong. She will not admit if she's anything bad or anything along those lines. But I think a lot of it for her is just, I think she likes being in a position of authority. She likes leading others, and she likes doling out punishments. But she likes being the one to guide others according to her beliefs. And
I would push back a little bit on that. I think maybe that's where it starts, but like specifically,
he really they're just so opposites, and she sees in him a complete threat to not only her identity but her actual role in not only the church but the school, but as a person. Like, that's who she is. That's all she has left. And so by him going in there at all the way he is, so casual about it, and as popular as he is, she's like, what the fuck?
I mean, I sort of want to put back on it a little bit, because I think, again, like, I think she worked with other priests just fine. I think she understands and respects the hierarchy. In fact, that's the only thing she respects. I think what we see wait 1 second though. Like, I think where we see her change is in the scene with Viola Davis, because I think that's the scene where where Meryl Streep's character like realizes the full like horror of what it means to be complacent. Because Viola Davis as the boy's mother is like, what's, you know, like, let him just live out the rest of the school year. Like, what's the harm? Like, basically, like, you should like let my son continue being molested. If I don't have a problem with it, if he barely has a problem with it, like, if his dad's going to kill him if he comes home as gay, and this priest is the only kid, like, the only person who's ever looked out for this kid, and this kid was probably gay beforehand because that's why his dad's like upset with him, then why not just let him and the priest have this relationship? Because it's like sanctioned, maybe not sanctioned by God, but like, if that's what the priest wants to do and that's what's keeping the kid alive, then let the priest molest the kid. Essentially, that's not what's said. It's all stated kind of covertly and more like coded language, but that's essentially the message. And Meryl Streep's like her face is just like, why should I not let? Because it's fucking crazy. Like, that's nuts. Of course we shouldn't let it.
I absolutely agree with you. It's definitely that realization, I think, because I think she was really waiting for the mom to be like, oh my god.
Yeah, she was waiting for the mom to like freak out, and the mom didn't
but
freak
we
out.
remember it is the early mid-60s. We have to remember, put that into perspective. And Viola Davis is like, my husband's gonna beat him.
Mhm.
He's gonna get beat up at school if someone's not there to protect him, an authority figure's not there to protect him. He doesn't have friends. He doesn't have anyone other than me, and I can't protect him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is all he has in order to get out of this situation. If he needs a protector for a few more months.
Yeah, she keeps saying till the end of the year. What's the harm? Till the end of the year.
He'll have a better situation to get away from the father and get away from these other people. That's her thought process. And I can understand and I can definitely understand to a certain extent. It's just such a horrible, traumatizing situation. But also it just really shows the feeling of systematic abuse. Because you even see it with her where she even talks about it. She's like, oh, I know exactly.
Well, yeah, and that's why it's interesting to me, and I wonder if it was written into the play, which John Patrick Shanley, I believe, also wrote. It was a very famous Broadway play. They always used to get confused with Proof for some reason, because I feel like they were out during the same time on Broadway, like Proof and Doubt, and they were just one-word titles.
It's Proof that one with that movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes. So that's also a drama Broadway play, and it was out, I believe, on Broadway around the same time. So I always used to get them confused. I'd be like, the one about the molesting priest or the one about math? Basically, because those are the two stories that were on that were non-musicals on Broadway around this period of time. But I don't know, like, I mean, it would make sense that the character would always be black and the mother would always be black, because it's just to highlight even more so how systematic or how systemic these issues are, both of them. Like they're how this character is not just maybe queer, maybe isolated, but also a person of color, a child of color in a period of time when the schools had just become segregated, that a lot of Catholics wouldn't want their kid going to school, or a lot of Catholics, a lot of like white people, I just mean white people in general, wouldn't want their kid going to school with a black child. That child would be picked on. And then if that child was also othered by being like gay, like you can almost see like the moms being like, what's the harm? Like what's, if he's getting molested by the priest, but the priest is looking out for him, like the horror of that reality hitting Meryl Streep, that her system of justice, that her system of righteousness is justice. Like, it's almost like Loki in that first episode, like realizing just how small his role is, how small, like his crusading campaign has been this entire time, because, he's so focused on one thing, but there's this whole larger systematic abuse going on. I think that's the moment where Meryl Streep realizes this isn't just about her pride. It's not just about like her wanting to prove Amy Adams wrong or prove that she's right. It's about the fact that like a child is being molested, and the mother saying
that's something I usually find kind of interesting about it, is because I don't think he was molested. I do, however, think the other boy at the very end was being molested. I think he was being molested. Which because one? She mentioned, and where Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's like, what did I do?
Oh,
because
yeah.
Evidence. She's going off a gut feeling. There's
the
nothing.
Smelled like wine. That was the one thing that she had on him.
Yeah. And what does that motion mean? Where he's like, that boy, he looked scared of you. You reached for his hand and he pulled back so fast.
Yeah, she said she saw it in the window. Yeah.
And she pulled him aside. But you see moments with him throughout the film about him being troubled and how, he's flirting with girls and everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, the kid's troubled. Like, that's obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. He is troubled. But also he's a 12-year-old boy. He's experimenting.
And he's a black kid in a school, and he's thought to be queer. Like, this kid's troubled no matter what.
It's the 60s.
He's in a Catholic school.
Middle school's a horrible place.
Yeah. It's a terrible place.
In particular, though, but the moment that I was like convinced that because we don't get a solid answer at any point during the movie, which I think is actually really great. I love movies with ambiguous endings, but there's a real focus where Philip Seymour Hoffman, he gave his last sermon and he's like, this is my last time with you guys. I'm going to go down the aisle and I'm going to shake y'all's hands and everything for like 5 seconds. We really get a solid close-up of this kid, and he has far away look in his eye, and he smiles, and he looks so grateful. And that's like, oh shit, that's the kid that we should have been worried about.
Well, yeah, and I think that's actually I didn't catch that look, but that's really interesting because in the beginning there was a conversation where the black kid asked that kid if he's fat. Is that what he asked me? Yes, that's a weird question.
No,
I think about
that's a different kid. That's a very different kid.
Oh, that's a different kid.
Yeah, that was between him and another Alta boy, but his name was something London or something. He was like a blonde, tall kid.
Yeah. So the thing that we get about this kid is that his breath, the one piece of evidence that she had was that his breath smelled like wine. And so, and Amy Adams, who was like, again, very naive, very like, raindrops on roses kind of nun, had seen at one point, she watched Philip Seymour Hoffman. She watched the kid kind of scurry out, and she didn't see the kid do anything, actually. She just saw Philip Seymour Hoffman take a child's undershirt and put it in his locker and and then turn and kind of look at her and not be like startled. He doesn't give it look like he's surprised or
he doesn't look guilty. Yeah,
he just kind of looks at her and he's like, oh, like, hey, like, what's up? And she's, but it's enough to like make her think something's weird. And then she's like, well, the kid came into class later that day. His breath smelled like wine. He put his head down on the desk and like he didn't like really move for the rest of the session. So like
he moved his head very peculiar.
Yeah. So like that coupled with her suspicion. And, this could also be like a very good metaphor for like how gossip is circulated and like how like witch hunts get started and like it's based off gut instincts and very little things. And these nuns who are like kind of gossipy, and that's all they have. And they're pushing back against this idea of a progressive priest. I mean, that's what's really interesting is like this movie can be played both ways. And Philip Seymour Hoffman at no point is seen as evil. He does make this one kind of interesting speech to Amy Adams where he's like, he never says he does anything. He's like, but if what I represent is like love, like if I accept these children for who they are and I want to spend time with them and I open my heart to them and I open and they open their heart to me and like that's love and that's like why should that ever be wrong? Like you can read it both ways, right? You can read it as like the love that a priest is supposed to have, or you can read it as like him being like, well, shit, lady, what do you want? Like, if you want a progressive priest, you're gonna get a gay priest and molest kids. Like, what do you want?
Yeah, that's what's like. But also, we have to remember not to associate a progressive.
No, I'm saying that's what his.
Yeah, obviously, a progressive religious leader or priest or anything.
Right, but I think what his argument would be in the 64. Like the analogy of it being 64 right now, like 1964, is that he's saying he's complaining thing and he's doing a little bit of that gaslighting thing too, where he's like, if you want progressive, then that means that you have to accept like this and this and this, and it's like gaslighting because that's not true. Like if you want to progressive, you want to be progressive or liberal, it doesn't mean that you have to be gay, and if you are gay, it doesn't mean that you molest children. But he's making it like these if-then statements, almost like it's like almost argument of almost like trying to make it that equivalent.
Yeah. And the thing is, for sure, it's definitely really iffy because a lot of the statements, again, are really vague and it really points out just how fantastic the writing is because you really can read it both ways. Like, oh my gosh, like if, and I read that whole conversation very differently now versus like watching it for the first time in my late teens.
What did you read it as originally?
What?
What did you read it as originally?
Well, I mean, I kind of, when I heard that conversation, I read it more as like he's just talking about, being a really good priest, and being a good priest means having, and on occasion means being a therapist and having those good sometimes one-on-one relationships with kids, especially if some of them are going through a bad time, and they are. And middle school fucking sucks. And the 60s in particular, just like any time though, but 60s in particular was a very difficult time for a ton of people. And Donald Miller, who was the young soul black kid in the school, he really had a relationship with Philip Seymour Hoffman's character that by all means, from our point of view, felt very genuine. He liked talking with him. He actively sought him out, and he's like, and he told him he wants to be a priest, and he gave him a little toy thing, and he's like, well, if you have any questions, come out and find me. But Like we never, in the scenes that we saw, there was never anything that was untoward. It was just,
Right.
and it, but.
Right. I mean, her thing, the thing is that he's portrayed as such a, like we said, it is this idea of like, well, are we, you know, it is this false equivalency of like progressiveness and like getting that confused with like what we're allowing, like what we're being liberal about. Are we saying that priests are, that we recognize gay people as being just equal human beings? Are we saying that priests are allowed to be gay? Are we saying that them being gay equals them molesting children? Because like these are all very like, these were all never spoken about like directly out loud. Like these were, I think in the way that this is talked about in this movie, we're probably very close to like how these issues were actually discussed, which means that you never got any clarity and there was no clear light. They were just like, being homosexual is a sin. And so there's no more discussion about it. The end. Like love, these like vague conversation about what love is, Jesus is love, the priest's love. These are all very abstract sentiments because we're just talking about the hypothetical. Like none of this was actually practically written down, because if you don't recognize homosexuality as being a thing that is not a sin or something that's just allowed, that is just accepted, and then separating that from the other like boogaloos that you might believe about homosexuality, that like it causes you to molest children, it causes this, it causes you to go to hell. If you never separate them, then you're going to always equivalate them together. And so, you know, priests, and then you're saying that priests are not gay because by definition they are like the good people, and by definition they're the top of the hierarchy in terms of power. So therefore they are never gay, therefore that's never what's happening.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think this movie makes me really want to watch Spotlight again.
Nothing makes me want to watch Spotlight again, but I understand.
It's like it's been a while since I haven't seen it in like maybe 2.5 years or so. So it has been quite a chunk of time, obviously. But I remember watching it, and I don't like to say I thoroughly enjoyed it because that's not a right word to use to describe the plot. But it's a great movie. It's a great drama, and with so many really fantastic performances and everything as well. Now, I think something that really points out really well is just the role of the church within the community. And I do agree with you. A lot of religious leaders in particular, especially at that time, they are really, I agree with you, they are really put on a pedestal for sure within the community. They were the teachers. They were obviously, literally, they were the priests and the leading the sermons and everything, providing guidance to everyone. And what makes it in particular, and that makes it even more difficult, and the community, that much more protective of their community leaders, because their idea is like, if they're fucked, what does that mean for us?
Right.
What does it mean?
And what does it mean for kids? That's like bad to begin with.
Like they've been teaching their kids and everything. Wrong. Yeah.
It's sort of like if you're taking cues from people who are saying, they're the ones who were saying homosexuality is a sin to begin with. Like they're the ones that are making these rulings and who are saying these things. So like then the idea, like, you know, the taboo of molesting a child is so extreme. Like it is such, like, it is, along with incest, probably the worst taboo that there is in the world, right? And like the incest taboo is itself like associated with children and molestation. And so the idea of you know, maybe it was just that Philip Seymour Hoffman's character was a gay man who was not inappropriately touching children, but who had been known to like have attraction towards other men, and who had gotten caught by his other parish in a relationship with another man. And so that's why he was so scared about the idea that Meryl Streep had talked to another nun. There's no, like you said, there's no intonation here from what we've seen, except maybe like that little look at the end, that like Philip Seymour Hoffman is anything other than like a progressive man, like a progressive priest. Yeah. Like he's shown to be creepy towards the kids. We see him alone with children. We see scenes with him and the children alone, and he doesn't seem to be anything other than patient and kind. That's not saying that is proof that he didn't do anything, because we know that a lot of these, when a lot of predators are able to convincingly not molest a bunch of kids and like have those kids love him and like love them and stuff, and it's the children that they start grooming that is the problem. But I'm saying that it could be quite possible, because there is this conflation between homosexuality and molestation and pedophilia, that he was just a gay man who was a priest and who was, and who was afraid of being outed. And so he left and under
essentially providing a good figure or father figure
In which case,
literally and figuratively to Donald Miller,
yeah,
who actually mentioned in retaliation to Meryl Streep's character, Sister Aliosia, where she was like, they were talking about the Christmas pageant that they want to organize, and she was like, now that I do want to bring up Donald Miller. And he's like,
she was always going to, I think she just, right. She already had a sour taste. She wasn't going to not bring up Donald Miller because she already brought that
absolutely,
issue.
Absolutely. She just needed a way to kind of casually work him in the conversation because it was like very obvious from the get-go. And
but right, she does bring it up in a sort of retaliatory way because she doesn't like the other things that he's doing, and so she's like, okay, and you might have must be good.
Yeah. Before that, though, she even mentioned we need to hide him. We want to make sure we're not putting him front and center because at the school there's a lot of Italian and a lot of Irish families, and they do not like the fact that we have a young Black child attending our school. And in theory, we want to do it because we want to protect him.
Like she immediately outs him. Like she's immediately like, that kid.
Yeah, and it's like, let's just put him in the back. Let's hide him. And Philip Seymour Hoffman said, why should we treat him any different?
Oh, we're talking about the pageant itself. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like we like. There's no reason to treat him any different. He's a kid. If he wants to try out for the snowman, he can try out for the snowman. It doesn't really matter. If people got a problem, that's their problem. That's nothing to do with us. And you and that would have been a good sentiment, by the way. In that moment.
And by the way, you can see again both sides of these issues being correct. Like her instinct is not to punish a child, but to protect him against the racism in the community. And Philip Seymour Hoffman's instinct is also correct, which is that if the community sees the Catholic Church embracing this child and letting him do all the same things, then their instincts and their temperaments and their outlook towards the situation might change. But if the kid keeps on being hidden in the back, the outlooks probably never will change. But it is also true that putting him front and center is going to make him like more of a target. Like they're both equally right, and thus like a very play. Because
the approach, one's proactive, one is reactive.
Yeah, one's proactive, one's reactive, but also one's more aware of like the larger. I think one of them is more idealistic in the way that Amy Adams is idealistic, and one of them is more practical about like what the reality of the situation is.
Yeah, one of them is not looking to change the world. One of them is just looking to protect one child.
The status quo too. Like she also represents very much the status quo, like the idea of like no ballpoint pens, because if you use ballpoint pens instead of like these pens, then the kids become too like ribald and they become too crazy if you let them use. It's like the idea that like any movement out of line with this strict structure is going to cause total bedlam and chaos. And like, what should you think about a child being gay if that child was just gay, full stop? Like, we don't know. Like, I don't think that she would be that accepting of a child who read as gay, even if he was like a underprivileged child. Like, you get the sense that she's just very strict and like she's very much like by the books. And her instinct and her campaign against Philip Seymour Hoffman, like you said, is as much a campaign of pride and as much a campaign against keeping things kind of the status quo and playing by the rules and making sure everyone else does, as it is about protecting one person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I do think a lot of it comes down to pride as well. And also something to remember about Donald Miller's character is at the end. I did mention that the other boy, the blonde boy, that was definitely that's more known for being a troublemaker throughout school, that flinched when the father reached for his hand.
That flinched.
That smiled at the very end. Donald Miller, however, we also got like a 5-second close-up of him as father was going down the aisle and shaking hands, and he looked so sad. He looked like he was holding back his tears. His eyes were like super red.
Couldn't that be either way though? Like, I mean, that could be read either way, right? Like, I mean,
yeah, absolutely. But he just looked really sad. And I do think that even Amy Adams' character, I can't remember her name. It was Sister James. Yeah, Sister James. She mentioned, he could have had that reaction after leaving him, where he was kind of sad, or he acted kind of peculiar after class because of the abuse he's getting at home. That could very well, that's absolutely.
Well, and we haven't brought up the fact that, like, apparently, so the drinking of the wine is like this crucial thing, right? Because it's the idea that, like, well, did the priest give him wine, or did he catch him drinking wine, told him, like, okay, you know what, this will just be a secret between us. But then when he's pressed about it, he's like, okay, you want to know the truth? I caught him drinking wine, but now that I told him I would keep it a secret so he can continue being an altar boy because he needs this. But if you need the truth that badly, then you're actually punishing the kid, which is, again, like, it's a little bit gaslighty. It's a little bit manipulative. But he's saying, if you need to know why his breath smelled like wine, it wasn't me. He drank wine, and I was protecting him by keeping a secret. But look, now you did it. Now you added him, and now we have to stop him being an altar boy. So good on you. And that's like that's really kind of manipulative. Even if that is the case, it's like a shitty way to deflect blame, you know, and sort of throw the kid under the bus. And I think by definition,
what else would you say though? Like, if that is actually what happened, though, hypothetically, what else would you say?
Be like, I don't know why his breath smelled like wine. I caught him, I would insinuate it. I wouldn't say that, like, I caught him or that he did this and therefore you have to kick him out because you know the rules. If he's, like, trying to say that, like, he saw the kid doing wine, he could do it in the way that he does everything else. And, like, everything else in the movie is spoken, like, with coded language. I saw him near the altar, maybe doing something untoward. And, like, we had a stern lecture afterwards, and then he went back to class. Like, you don't have to be explicit about it, but his explicitness, like, forces the hand of Meryl Streep to be like, of course he can't be an altar boy after this. And it kind of throws the kid under the bus in a way that's, like, pretty grimy, no matter what the actual situation was. I get that he might have been caught in the moment, and he was like, well, this is what happened. And, like, fuck you for making me say this out loud. Like, really, screw you, lady. Like, what's your big problem? Like, you just said you wanted to keep the kid in the back, and you were trying not to, like, let him be shown. And now, like, you just found a reason for him not to be an altar boy. Congratulations. We can also see how, like, this is just, like, I think you're right. Like, the more I think about it, this is a movie that's just about two egos. It's about the pride of these two people. And it's just sort of, they kind of put the boys second, like, at the end of the day, because their war against each other becomes, like, the war of attrition.
I think more than anything, for sure, is that not only is it a war, this movie is a war of egos, it's also, it's to me, they were both kind of looking for an excuse to fight.
Yeah.
She was looking for an excuse to go at him and get him kicked out because she didn't like him at all. She's been, she recognized, and the whole hand thing happened before Sister James chat with her.
Well, by the way, the whole thing happened, like, with the first thing that she says that she sees, not to him. She told him at the end she saw the hand, or she saw, like, the thing from the window. Right, but, like, the first thing that we see that she says that she saw was that his speech in the beginning is about doubt. And it's about the nature of doubt and what it means to question your own beliefs. And she goes, why would a priest need to do that? Why would he give a sermon on doubt and what, like, the nature of doubt is? Why would he do that unless he's questioning his own belief system? And it's interesting because, like, in Judaism, like, that's what Judaism is all about. You're supposed to question your beliefs. You're supposed to constantly be questioning, why are we doing this? Why is this night different than other nights? Why would God let us suffer like this? Like, why would this happen the way it happens? And you're supposed to be constantly supposed to be pushing back a little bit. And you're supposed to be doing a lot of critical thinking when you read the Torah, like, a lot of, like, like, why would it be this way? Is this a metaphor? Is this, like, literally what happened? But Catholicism, I think, is supposed to be, from what I understand, is supposed to be very, very different. And you're not supposed to question it. And, like, you're not supposed to have doubts, especially if you're a priest. Like, you're not supposed to have any thought in your mind about this not being 100% literal fact and, like, truth of God. I'm saying, like, for this time period
the approach for it, and as far as this movie,
that's my meaning. The approach in this movie is that it's supposed to be, why, she even says, she goes, why would a priest ever have to give a sermon about doubt? Why would he ever be feeling doubt? Why is this emotion even something that he would recognize?
Well, that's the thing. It's that's a really, and I think that speaks more to her than about him, because I think the conversation behind doubt is not a new thing. Obviously, it is a conversation priests have had sermons about forever. And so the idea that, oh, this is a thing that's unique to him because no one else would ever do that, because priests don't have any doubts, because sermons are not always about the priest. It is about what's going on in the community, obviously. And so it just feels like she's projecting more than anything, rather than him talking about his self-doubts. It felt more like she's projecting her doubt onto other people, make themselves doubt, when he seems pretty comfortable up until then.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. This is much about her thing and like whatever, and she wants to be the self-righteous one, and she wants to believe that she's, you know, sort of the master and commander. I mean, again, it goes back to a little bit of like why she is the way she is and what the role of women have in this community at this time, and the sort of cloistered, quiet sort of rules of the nuns versus the sort of ribald, you know, like loud drinking allowances the men and the priests are allowed to have, even if they're not allowed to have sex. It is allowed that they are allowed to get drunk. They're allowed to be frivolous. They're allowed to be sort of silly or like outlandish in a way that the women.
They're allowed to make mistakes.
They're allowed to be more, I think, in a way, more feminine than the women are allowed to be masculine. The women aren't allowed to be given any powers, but the women are thought of as these very, like, you know, stern, you know, at least Meryl Streep saw as this very stern, very by rule structure.
Yeah.
Amy Adams and Dustin Hoffman are more like, you know, they're more blousy. They're more like, you know, about love, and they talk more in the coded language, I think, of a more feminine structure than I think the Catholic Church would like that.
I didn't think of it like that, but absolutely, you're totally right. I also think that the male characters in this movie in particular, and I think also in priests in general, especially compared to nuns, are just given a lot more leverage. They're given the opportunity to be more human by comparison.
We never hear a nun doing anything and being like, oh, well, that's just what nuns do.
You never hear about that. We
hear about how mean they are and like how awful they are, but like how they can't.
Exactly, they're painted more villainous rather than as heroic, which is really.
And we never get the sense like
priests are painted. A lot of priests.
And again, I'm coming from like the idea of pop culture, but it's always portrayed as the nun couldn't get a man, so she became a nun, whereas the priest found a higher calling. Like that's sort of like the narrative. It's like the priest found God and chose a life away from having sex with women to pursue a priesthood. Whereas the nuns are always like, well, she was just a haggard old crone, and so she just became a nun. She's sour and couldn't like have a child or was barren. You know, like it's always that kind of narrative. That, you know, that's why Amy Adams and Maria from Sound of Music, it's that idea of like the cheery, young, pretty nun who like maybe didn't choose this lifestyle, or like she chose this lifestyle, but one day she'll just find a nice man and get out of it. Like it's a temporary stasis for her. It's not a lifelong commitment.
Well, I mean, if you look at historically speaking, obviously, families sent their daughters away to nunneries, essentially until if they felt like they were acting untoward, if they felt like to go essentially into hiding if they ended up pregnant, or if they just started behaving or if they were just too damn smart for their family to handle.
Aren't too damn smart.
Too damn smart. Because at least in nunneries, nuns were actually given the ability. They were given the ability to read. They were given read, write, teach. They had, in theory, careers that a lot of places didn't allow women to go into.
Yeah.
they were allowed to experiment and be scientists to a certain extent, which is kind of interesting. But drawing it back to this movie, still the priests are allowed to not only, like you said, they are allowed to behave a certain way in the community that the nuns were not. They were also allowed a lot of flexibility, personality that nuns were not allowed. In particular, like even the conversation, like, oh, Sister Agatha or whatever her name is, she's going blind.
Yeah, that conversation, that whole thing about whether or not is going blind.
Yeah, and Meryl Streep is like helping her with a fork and everything. She actually does seem like she's genuinely helping her. She got food.
This is like an unfeeling person. Like she's just shown as being kind of a bitch, you know.
Yeah, but she did mention specifically that, oh, if they find out, I don't know who they are, if they find out that she's going blind, she's going away.
Yeah, I didn't really understand what that meant too. Like, who's they?
Yeah.
I don't think like Philip Seymour Hoffman was going to send her away because she's going blind. It seemed to
Well,
be this.
she wouldn't be the one to make the decision. It wasn't her, him.
No, I'm saying Philip Seymour Hoffman doesn't seem like he would send her away. So I don't know who the they are. I agree.
But yeah, he wouldn't be making the decision if
Who would?
she sent her away, even if it was. Because
like,
he was
who
not the highest.
to, I guess is my question.
Yeah, the Monsigliere or whatever his name is.
Yes, but like, why would they care if a woman's going blind? Don't nuns and don't they all take care of blind people like all the time? Isn't that kind of
because you at least back then you can't be blind and still be a teacher and work with children.
Well, you absolutely could be. That's one of those things because blind is one of those few diseases where yeah, but blind is considered like one of those few diseases that's sort of like, well, it makes you more pure in a way. It keeps you more chaste, like it makes you more holy than. It's not like leprosy or something like that, but it's like almost like that level of like holiness. I don't see why. I feel like there's a lot of stories of blind priests or blind.
I think that might be different for a school, though.
Maybe I just don't understand like what this big secret of her going blind was. She's an old woman. Of course, she might be going blind. That doesn't make her like any less of a good teacher. It doesn't mean she's senile. She's just going blind. But that's a small point. I have to run for 1 second and go pee, but I'll be right back. So continue talking about. I want to hear from you, actually, if you're at all interested, saying why this does or does not fit into your idea of like what John P. Shanley's shtick is, like, because we watched a couple of these movies now, right? Like, and this movie to me seems like very, very far from what we've watched of his other work.
This is actually a prequel to Moonstruck. It's in the same neighborhood as Moonstruck. That's it. Full of Italian and Irish kids. Yeah. But overall, you guys, anyone in the chat? Is anyone in the chat? If not, that's totally fine. But if you are, please say something. That'd be appreciated. I'm just hanging out. I'm all alone with my cats, and they're howling. I don't know if you could hear that, but my cat Atlas was howling just now. I don't know why. He has a new water bowl, and I gave him food right before he went live, and I guess I'm just not petting him enough. I'm just not giving him the correct amount of affection. I'm not entirely sure. But, cats are temperamental little assholes, aren't they? No? Where's my... No, I was going to see if I can pick up the other one and show him to you, but he's not here.
Sorry, I'm back. My back is so red. What? Sorry. My back is so red. Like, it's all like...
I can't tell from this view, honestly. Okay. Like because it looks like your regular skin, to be honest.
Oh, thank you. Good. Sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I was just saying my cats are howling, but I honestly think this could be a prequel to Moonstruck. It's set in a similar neighborhood. We don't know if it's set in Boston or New York or wherever. Maybe.
I think it's set in Boston. There's a lot of Boston accents. I feel like in the beginning.
Maybe there's a lot of accents. But the real focus is like there's a lot of Italians and a lot of Irish. And there's a lot of
weird. Don't those two types of Catholics usually go to their own? I mean, again, I don't know, so you tell me. But like, don't those type of Catholics go to their own church? There's an Irish church and an Italian church, like because there's Roman Catholic, right? And that's not the Irish, right? Or am I crazy?
Roman Catholic I know a lot of Catholics that go to. I know a lot of Irish people that go to Roman Catholic churches and vice versa.
Okay, so. Well, I just don't know if that was like the same in the 60s. I don't know if this is the. You really think this could be like a prequel?
Unintentional prequel?
Like in terms of tone, in terms of story, in terms
of course not. Of course, yeah, definitely not in terms of tone or anything. But it was kind of funny to potentially see.
I almost thought it more like Wild Mountain Time. Like this could maybe be in the same room. I'm not saying the same world or like the same. Because like it's about basically like if there is something to be said here, like if we want to take a certain view of it, it is about the ambiguity of what the nature of his secret is. and that it might not be this thing that we think it is. It might not be something deviant. It might just be something very embarrassing and very personal to him, and which is honestly none of our business, but becomes larger like story within the community, and sort of like threatens like his identity and threatens his livelihood, because there's this, gossipy nun who believes this bad thing about him because he's sort of strange and he's different. And so in that way, I feel like it was a kind of Wild Mountain Time.
Wild Mountain Time. There's a whole bunch of gossip.
Yeah, there's a whole. This guy's weird.
There's a little bit of commentary on mental health and relationships.
There's nothing wrong. He didn't touch a kid. He just thinks he's a bee.
And just the whole what could have been. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I
think Moonstruck's so interesting because he's very clearly an Irish person. Like he's Irish. I'm guessing from the name. I
said not Italian.
I don't think he's Italian. I don't think John Patrick Shanley is an Italian person. I think he's most likely.
That's fair. That's fair considering the name.
I think it's an Irish person, but I think Moonstruck works so well because just like you said we talked about the Jewish community in New York, the Irish community anywhere, and the Catholic, and the Italian community can overlap in a lot of ways. Like they can overlap in terms of sensibilities or ideals or the churches they go to, or like it's easy to transplant a Irish idea of religion or like about fate, about love, about whatever into like a very Italian community. They're all very cloistered. They're all not cloistered, but they're all very close knit. It's all about the family. It's all about like the community. It's all about what people think of you. It's all about, making sure that like you're doing things the right way.
Now that I think about it, I'm surprised there's not more religious leaders in Wild Mountain Time. Was there like a priest or something that I just can't remember?
No, and what's weird is so many people died in that movie, and yet we never see like a scene of a priest.
Or a funeral?
No, we never see a funeral. We never see a priest. I guess it's sort of like it's almost like a very like, it's not a-religious because they mention a couple times like going to heaven and seeing somebody's like wife or whatever, but it's very like it's very agnostic in a way. It's very much like that's over there, and like religion and God, like maybe Walken mentions God a couple times, but it's not being weaponized or used in any way that's like it is in this movie. I mean, it's funny because in this, God doesn't come up that much either. It's not really about God. It's about like the rules that structure the community and the faith. And it's not really about like the abstract ideas of what God would allow or what God would be cool with, or whether God would like a gay guy to be like in charge of kids, or whether God like accepts homosexual children or black children. It's not about what God feels. It's all really about the rules that govern a particular community. And in that way, it's like less religious than it is like political. Like in a way, it's much more about the politics of the time than it is about the religion as a total.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think just, again, it just speaks to the level of really great writing.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
This movie, I do want to kind of talk a little bit about the actual direction of the film. This is, as far as I know, the second film that John Patrick Shanley directed, which is kind of mind-blowing to me, and out of 3. And what a crazy filmography, and from writing and directing, obviously, is very, very different yet very similar in certain ways. Oh, and
wait till we get to Congo. I'm sure that's going to be a freaking.
I'm sure it's been quite a mindfuck for sure. But also, what a great Irish accent he did during his sermon. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, he does have an Irish accent the rest of the movie, which is weird. It's just during that one sermon. It's kind of funny.
It was just during the one sermon when he was like doing it, like when he was talking about gossip.
Talking up, yeah.
Which was actually a really great story for sure. But I do want to talk about the production design. Now, this movie, it feels like a play. Similar to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, with the absolutely wonderful Viola Davis that also is in this movie. And I loved the use of colors, the aesthetic in this movie, the really deep blues, greens, and grays. It really created like a really essential moodiness to this film that I think is very essential. Like, obviously, this movie would have not worked nearly as well if there was a bunch of yellows and pinks and oranges. Like, it would have created a very different vibe for this movie.
I think that's entirely true. I think that, like, you know, he's very good at these aesthetics. I think when we get to our movie next week, because we're going to keep on going this. How'd you pronounce his last name? I think I might have been pronouncing it wrong this whole time. I've been saying Stanley. Is it not Stanley?
Stanley?
I thought it was Stanley with like a T, like Stanley, but with a st at the beginning. Is it not that? I could be wrong.
Oh, now I'm like overthinking. It's Shanley.
There's no T in there?
No T.
Oh man, I've been doing this wrong the whole day.
John Patrick Shanley.
Shanley, okay.
Shaney.
Okay, well, my apologies then, because I've been calling it like it rhymes with Stanley. And I thought that was really funny, and that was like the basis of most of my jokes, is that like it sounds like Stanley, but it's Shanley, which is way more Irish than
super Irish.
Stanley, Stanley, which sounds like a Yiddish version of Stanley. I was like, that's such a weird Irish name, Stanley. Stanley makes a lot more sense. It also makes it very clear that man is Irish. He's not Italian.
Unless he was adopted into Irish family or something.
Yeah, something like that. I think, you know, it's really funny for me to like look at his career, his trajectory. I guess now I've seen 2 of the films he directed. What was the third one?
The other one. Okay, so Joe vs. Volcano. This one and
directed. That's right. Okay, so I can admit now, we can say it out loud. Joe vs. Volcano is going to be our movie for next week, and that is one of the funniest. Like Moonstruck, I think it's one of the. And Moonstruck isn't that funny. I think Moonstruck is just a great like romance movie. Joe vs. Volcano is legit one of the funniest rom-coms, like adventure rom-coms I've ever seen. Like it is hysterically funny. Like there are moments out there that are just like, it's so well nailed. Like I was watching it, I didn't realize it was the same guy who wrote the movie that directed the movie, but it has this fluency to it where you're just like, oh, like the Dan Hedaya stuff in the beginning is absolutely amazing. And like it hits and like Tom Hanks has never been like funnier or cuter, and like neither is Meg Ryan. Their chemistry is great, but like it definitely feels like a perfect adventure, like, you know, kind of like a throwback kind of rom-com, and it's really, really funny. And I'm trying to put that in the same room as this movie, which is like the opposite of anything funny or romantic or like at all uplifting. Like it is a very dour film. And I'm just trying to think of like how you got from there to there and put like Moonstruck in between, like, cause he's the playwright behind Doubt. He wrote it for Broadway, I believe. Yeah. So he's like a playwright. So I was thinking maybe like it's like the McDonough brothers, like Patrick McDonough, Martin McDonough. I think it's Patrick McDonough is the other one.
Oh my gosh.
You know, like Martin McDonough is very much like he does The Beheading is Spokane, but he'll also do like Seven Psychopaths. Like he'll do like a light movie and a dark movie, or a light play and a dark play. And the McDonough brother and the other brother did like it's called, oh my god, what is it called? Not Rectory. It's called, I'm having enough now, but it's about like Dom Hall Gleason's dad, so the other Gleason, being a priest and getting like a death threat in the mail and having to go through this small Irish town and figure out who sent him the death threat and is going to get murdered, basically. Yeah. It's really good. But it's very like serious. It's really good. It's got Chris O'Dowd in it, and it's got sort of playfulness to it, but it's very Calvary. It's called Calvary. That's what it is. It's really good. It's got Littlefinger from Game of Thrones in it. I love that movie, but it's like very much like it's a serious Irish drama, you know, but they can also be kind of lighthearted.
Well, that's something as you know, Lucas and our goal is to move to Ireland. That's our big thing. And I feel like from what we've talked with people about in particular is when it comes to Irish dramas, there have consistently been a heavy religious aspect, whether it be a religious leader in question or being judged, or helping someone, or whatever, or just whatever the situation is, converting a small town or whatever maybe. But it's Ireland in particular has such a very unique history and style of film, and I also think it's also a lot of their movies have a lot of similar color palettes with the greens and the blues and everything. That's actually very unique to Ireland, which it makes it have this weird romantic idea that's really followed through in movies like Wild Mountain Time. Yeah, it's just kind of weird. Even if you don't, even if you put even if you put like that movie you just described with Donald Gleason, even let's say you move it to like France, hypothetically you could change like the color story and the accents, and you could have the same story, but it would just feel so totally different. But that's the purpose. Anyway, overall, did you know John Patrick Shanley, he wrote some additional material for The Thief and the Cobbler?
I don't know what that is.
What?
I've never even heard of it.
Thief and the Cobbler?
Don't know what you're talking
one of the most beautiful animated films of all time?
I don't know. He also did that weird dinosaur movie we watched last week. I don't know. This guy's he's like the, you know what he is? He's like the James Mangold of like playwrights / directors. Like I cannot get a read on where this guy is going next. Like I cannot see the through line besides maybe some Ireland stuff. Like I cannot. When we watch Joe versus the Volcano, you're gonna be like whiplash. It's like this movie. Dinosaurs is the last movie. We're back to doubt.
This movie is so fucking weird. We're gonna bring it back to doubt here in a hot minute, but this is Aladdin before Aladdin. But the visuals of this movie are absolutely stunning. This movie took like, it was a fucking process to make. It took like 15 years to make.
Yeah, I'm doing an article right now about animated films. We're doing a script about anime films, and half the script is just sort of like, do you know how long it took to make this fucking movie? Because animated movies take years and years and years and years to make.
Yeah, it was like a whole thing, but the art and everything alone is definitely worth.
You're saying that he worked on it? He like wrote some of it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he wrote parts of it. Okay. Yeah, so I would love to dive into this movie because it is a mind fuck.
Huh.
It's a real mind fuck of a movie. It was. I don't know if it was technically released in theaters in the U.S.
Oh.
It's a weird one. It's a hard one to get a hold of, from what I remember. But I would literally love to cover that one sometime. It's so weird. But anyway, bringing it back to doubt, we are gonna be wrapping it up with a nice little bow here in a hot minute. So yeah, we're going to be covering here pretty soon. Next week, we're going to be covering Joe vs. Volcano. And the week after, we're going to be covering what? Congo. Yes.
We're just going to go out hard on the Shanley stuff until the end of time, guys. This is just where we're at now. Until we run out of objects or movies that he's done, we are going to be covering Shanley. No, I don't know. We might move off at some point. But I really like this. I really love this like retrospective we're doing on this guy's work, because it's sort of like a random pick, but his work is just so all over the place that like it's kind of like giving me a sense of like doing like a like we're doing an FBI criminal profile of someone and we're trying to get like a beat over his like MO, and I just cannot get a read on what this guy's MO is, like what his thinking is. I cannot, like Hannibal Lecter style, get inside this guy's head. I don't know where he's at.
It kind of makes me want to dive into some other directors a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think screenwriters specifically, screenwriter / director, like people who have done screenwriting and directing, I think have such interesting filmographies that we can often forget about.
Yeah, there's some directors like Chris Columbus. As a director, people like recognize him for being like Home Alone and for doing the first and second movie of the Percy Jackson movies. Is that
what we understand him to do, is Percy Jackson? I never realized that he was the Percy Jackson director, and I now think a little bit less of him. I didn't realize he was that movie.
He also did everyone's favorite movie, Pixels, with Adam Sandler.
Oh yeah, that's right. He did Pixels, and he did also Harry Potter.
The first and second one, and also one of the most beloved musicals ever put on film, Rent. But he did quite a bit of writing as well. He was actually, from what I remember, he was given a writing credit he was actually involved as a writer for almost all of the Indiana Jones films. He did Goonies. He did that movie 9 months. What?
9.5 months or 9 months? Like
9 months. Just 9 months. The one with Julianne Moore, Hugh Grant.
The Hugh Grant. Oh, that's weird because I was thinking the one with Kim Basinger and Mickey Rourke.
Oh yeah, that's I think that's 8.5 months. I want to say.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but he did. Yeah,
I forgot that was Julianne Moore. For some reason, I thought it was Sandra Bullock, but I saw the movie in theaters.
But also, can't forget, Chris Columbus wrote Gremlins, The Goonies.
I knew about Goonies. I don't think I knew he wrote Gremlins. That's so weird.
I'm looking at it right now. Gremlins, written by 1984.
Yeah, that makes sense about why Gremlins 1 is like not my favorite movie, but Gremlins 2 is like the best movie ever. I think Dante wrote Gremlins 2. He did
also, he did write, he did Goonies, Gremlins, Heartbreak Hotel. He did not write Gremlins 2, but he was involved.
I know he didn't, because that was entirely Dante. He had the whole thing with Richard, with that not Richard Roper. He had the whole thing with the critic who came in and like gave that bad review of Gremlins 1, and then had to eat that guy.
He was involved as a producer on The Lighthouse and I Kill Giants.
I mean, producer credits, we're starting to get a little bit iffy into like how much what their contribution is. Like, you can be a producer on something and not have that much say in like having it how it turned out, or you can be a producer on it and be like Tim Burton on Nightmare Before Christmas, where you wrote the source material and you wrote the, so producing credits get a little bit iffy. But I think that like you have a good idea that like we sticking to like one person's oeuvre gives us like a good sense of like how they changed, how Hollywood changed, like what kind of things they're interested in, because it can be very diverse. We can know somebody from doing one or two things and kind of put them in this little pigeonhole box of what kind of content they make or what kind of films. Look at me saying content like we're like the same as them. Just kidding. But I think that like, the more we can recognize that people are, have varying different shades, and not everyone's movies get made the kind of movies they want to make. And like, this is a strange one. I think Wild Mountain Time's a strange one. We know most people know Shanley from his Academy Award thing of Moonstruck, and they might know him from Joe versus the Volcano, but like they might forget that he also did Doubt and that he did on Broadway. This is his baby.
He's an award-winning playwright and Oscar-winning writer. It's crazy.
Well, Shanley, if you want to come on our program, like come join us for a minute. I think that's gonna then kind of sort of lead us out for the evening. Alex, do you have any place you want to plug right now, or anything that you're doing that's fun and fancy free?
Honestly, no. I'm just hanging.
You're just hanging?
Yeah, I'm just hanging. I'm not doing anything right now in particular.
Really? That's all right. You just like a lot of work, a lot of doing work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really doing all that much for a call to action right now, at least right now, in particular, to be honest. I mean, like, I do hop on like Twitch Tuesdays and everything, but I'm not hosting Schmoebaits anymore. But you're more than anyone that watches this, you're more than welcome to check out some of our old episodes. It's just really hard to put on a Schmoebait episode.
Yeah, dude, and every week I can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, I barely can show up for my own stuff. That being said, guys, follow me at patreon.com/VideoDrew. Check out this channel. We had a really fun quiz last night. We do the VideoChronic pop culture quizzes twice a week. We are going to have a Congo quiz the week that we're doing Congo. So Alex, consider this your invitation and your knowledge that this is happening, because I know I forget to tell you about the We're Back quiz. The Monday before that, we're going to be doing a Joe versus the Volcano quiz, or the Monday of that week. Monday or Thursday of that week, we'll do a Joe versus the Volcano quiz. I got to
work on both of these quizzes.
Yeah, I don't think... I'm not sorry, not for Joe versus the Volcano. We're doing a Congo quiz. We're not doing Joe versus the Volcano, I don't think. Although I'd like to do that. I think it's sorry. We're going to be doing a Congo quiz in 2 weeks from now. We're going to be doing a Congo quiz. So this is the invitation to that. I just invited you the wrong thing, but that's going to be happening. So those are Mondays and Thursdays. I do VideoChronic pop culture quizzes. On Sundays I do Live in the Dark. We're in the process of booking our guests for this week, so that's going to be fun. That's on Sunday nights around 8 or 9. We do this show now at 7. We had Frankie Alvarez and Jader Palermo, I said his name wrong again, Jader on last night to do. The Mask, and that was awesome. I love those two guys. It's very fun.
I love The Mask.
Oh my god, I hadn't seen that movie in so long. It was awesome. And then I've been doing a lot of stuff with Pokemon. So check me out on eBay and all those stores. I've been doing like some unboxing videos, and I think once I get home and we unpack and stuff, I have a bunch of stuff that I want to show people. So check it out. It's called Pikadrew's Pokemon. I think
You get any Pokemon recently?
I did. I have so many on me that I'd love to show you guys, but then I shouldn't, because I shouldn't like take them out of their little cases. But I will be making more videos soon, and so check out that content. And then yeah, we will see you guys next week. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and see you soon. Hello, Jada Palermo. LOL, but like that exists. Thank you for dropping by, nerd. See you guys. Bye. Mwah.